This episode of The Price of Football is sponsored by Proton Mail. Proton Mail is the world's largest secure email service designed to protect user privacy and security. Proton Mail ensures unparalleled email privacy through end-to-end encryption, which secures messages so only the intended recipient can read them. Even Proton Mail itself cannot access or decrypt your emails, guaranteeing zero access to your data.
Using Proton Mail means that the only two people who can see any emails I send are me and the person I've sent it to. So it provides me with protection against breaches and surveillance, safeguards my emails from hacking, unauthorized access, and government surveillance, and ensures all my communications remain private. I can easily transfer emails, calendars, and contacts from other providers with Proton Mail's user-friendly migration tool. And as part of the Proton ecosystem, Proton Mail integrates with Proton Drive, VPN, Docs, and Pass, which helps me to reduce my reliance on big tech and safeguard my personal information.
Tired of worrying about email security? Protect your messages with Proton Mail's end-to-end encryption. Go to proton.me/priceoffootball or click the link in the description to sign up now with a 38% discount. This episode of The Price of Football is supported by International Sports Convention 2025, which is taking place on March the 19th and 20th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. More than 1,000 delegates and 100 speakers will be attending the event, and they will be covering a huge range of topics, from sponsorship and fan engagement to governance and integrity. Founded in 2009, International Sports Convention is the meeting place for the business of sport and has been for the last 16 years.
And there's a special treat for those lucky enough to attend the 2025 edition. The two of us will also be appearing. We'll be having a chat about football finance and governance in front of a live audience. You can book your place now at a special early offer price by going to internationalsportsconvention.com. But don't delay, that special early offer price is only available until the 20th of February.
Book your place now for International Sports Convention 2025 at Spurs Stadium on the 19th and 20th of March by going to internationalsportsconvention.com, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind a beautiful game, with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, you're looking like one of them hostage videos again, so I take it you're not at home. You seem to have a mobile phone balanced on your long knees there.
I'm back up in Liverpool. I've just spent my first night at the apartment. I came up a wee bit early, and I don't have an extensive range of Allen keys as your alley, but they were put into extensive use over the last 24 hours. So now I've got a bed, and yesterday I used an air fryer for the first time. My life is new. I was running around. I did some Padron peppers in it, and I was running around like Nicky Weaver saving a penalty in the 1999 League One playoff final for Manchester City. I was giddy.
Oh, don't open that can of worms, Kieran, and then put that can of worms in the air fryer. Because Ed keeps going on about, why can't we get an air fryer? So first of all, because you've moved out. Basically, you don't live here anymore. So, and Ali just keeps saying it will change our lives. I like cooking. I don't just bung something in a doll's house oven and walk away, and it comes back and it's all done for me with napkins and knives and forks provided. Anyway. It was lovely to see you on Monday night, Kieran, and it's lovely to see so many people from the Price of Football Club who joined us for our Q&A. An awful lot of people who joined us for what turned out to be an hour-long session. It's nice to get an insight into other people's front rooms and bedrooms.
Yes, and cells.
The occasional kitchen and what did look like a monastery cell there. But we had some really good questions, and it's a really good session. I need to fix my laptop so that I can see all the comments that come in, because I can only see the first part of them. But our listeners seem quite happy chatting to each other for quite some time as well, Kieran, which was great.
Yeah. And we even people from the other side of the world, Australians as well.
We did, which seemed to amuse some of ours. One of our regulars who kept saying, "What's he like in Canada?" And he kept going, "It's Australian." And then you have to explain to the Australian, and that's British humour. Yeah. Speaking of British humour, Kieran, it's Newsday. This first news story involves West Ham and their legal battle with London Stadium. As it happened by coincidence, on Sunday, the Brentford game, I was sitting next to an old acquaintance of mine who is one of the managers of London Stadium. And if you want a robust sense of humour, I only wish I could tell you some of the things that he shared as an opinion about said legal battle, but he won't be a happy bunny, let's put it this way.
That's right. West Ham have successfully defended their position. When Daniel Krasinski bought I think it's around about 27% investment in West Ham United, or WH Holding is the name of the company that's involved. This, in the eyes of the London Council, this triggered a position such that West Ham's owners had to pay additional money if the club was partially sold beyond a certain threshold before a particular date. So therefore, the local authority would have got a share of the profit. But they had worded their own contract in such a loose way that West Ham, who, fair play to them, they'd looked at the small print. They said, "No, we've not." So all of the money has been kept by the estate, effectively, of David Gold and David Sullivan, who have made an awful lot of money from this particular deal. And Matt Slater, who's a friend of the show, he's done an extensive write-up of this in The Athletic, and Martin Ziegler as well, who I know well at the time. So it has made the civil authorities look a bit awkward here, and it all goes back to the fact that which is sort of leading into one of our next stories, if you promise a stadium which is going to leave a legacy and be very, very profitable in a nice glossy brochure, the numbers involved aren't necessarily particularly accurate, and there is actually a legacy cost to the taxpayers of London, because it's bringing in now almost £4 million a year in rent from West Ham United, but it's costing £17 million to run, and then it costs a fortune to carve out each summer to convert back into athletics appropriate stadium, and is proving to be just a disaster.
Well, you never know, Kieran. Now that Baroness Brady has won her legal battle as part of the West Ham ownership group, she might be slightly less desperate to prevent the regulator coming in, because I presume that was one of the things she didn't want the regulator looking at. And also, Kieran, it goes back to what Nick DeMarco has said to us on several occasions when it comes to these legal issues. Get the lawyers in, and he would say this, of course, because it's more work for lawyers, but get the lawyers in properly, the big lawyers, when the contracts are being drawn up, not when they go to court in 3 years' time because the contract turns out to be not fit for purpose. And it seems that football clubs in particular are not learning that lesson, or for people who deal with football clubs in particular, the authorities are not learning that lesson.
Yes, I mean, to be fair, West Ham were in a very strong position looking at the accounts of, I think it's called E20 LLP,
Yeah.
they had actually said in their accounts, we are trying to get some money off West Ham, but the advice that we've received is that we're probably going to lose the case, and indeed that proved to be so.
Yeah, most football fans, especially in London, we know what a decent deal West Ham have got. Everyone acknowledges that. But most football fans don't lay the blame at West Ham's door.
No.
They kind of wish that their own club owners were that shrewd. They lay the blame at the people involved from the Olympic legacy, who had rings run round them by experienced business people, essentially, and should have got better help at the time. You mentioned the new stadium. We're talking about Old Trafford, Kieran. That's the second of two Manchester United stories coming up. The first of the Manchester United stories, Kieran, is, I think, remarkable, almost in its barefaced cheek, because both publicly, Jim Ratcliffe talking to a Man United fans group, and in the matchday programme, I think the chief finance officer saying that they are in debt to a huge amount of money owed. They're at risk of breaching PSR rules. All of which means that stewards' pay is going to have to be cut, ticket prices are going to go up. Matt Busby's grandchildren are losing their season tickets, because that's the sort of saving you're going to make to avoid profit and sustainability breaches. But they seem to be indicating, Kieran, that they are in severe risk of breaching PSR rules.
They are, in my view, being very disingenuous.
Yeah.
I think what is happening is it's soft soaping the fans to create an expectation that they're going to have to go and contribute more. And they already, Manchester United, certainly when I first moved to Manchester in 1980, Manchester United was, even then, arguably the biggest club in the country, even though it wasn't the most successful during the 70s and 80s. But in terms of a fan base, it was huge. And I used to go on the Stretford End on a regular basis as a student. But it was cheap. I could. It was something like £1.30 there. I think it was £1.20 to go on the Kippax. So I used to alternate at weekends just to see football. It has become more expensive, and in terms of the direction of travel, we saw Jim Ratcliffe's comments that why should Manchester United fans pay less than Fulham?
Yeah,
I think the argument should be switched around. Fulham fans are paying too much. Doesn't mean that Manchester United fans should have to go and pay too much as well. There's talk about a breach of PSR, but at the same time, Manchester United have spent £219 million already in fiscal year 24-25 on players who have taken them oscillating between 12th and 13th in the Premier League. It's not the Manchester United fans, and we don't talk football here, but I'm going to mention a few football names. It wasn't Manchester United fans who overpaid for Jadon Sancho, who overpaid for Anthony. Both players who are now out on loan elsewhere, with Manchester United still stumping up a significant contribution to their wages. So to make fans pay the cost, and then to use PSR, and this is always my fear with PSR, it now becomes the pantomime villain of football. It allows owners who have poorly run clubs fiscally. Manchester United, yes, they've got debt, but the debt to the banks is not much more than it was in 2005. And certainly as a proportion of revenue, it's far lower. And the interest that they're paying on the loans is far lower than 2005 because they managed to renegotiate the loans. So I think what Manchester United are trying to do is to deflect from poor decisions which have been made at the club in terms of recruitment, and to say PSR, it's all due to the bad people at the Premier League who have devised the PSR rules, of which, of course, Manchester United were one. And if you take a look at Project Big Picture and Super League, the cost controls there would have been far more severe. So it's a weird one, because effectively what we have here is Manchester United saying, we'd like to invest more money. From the owners, i.e. from Jim Ratcliffe. There's no way the Glazers have put a penny into the club, but we can't due to PSR. And that just seems very strange. And then you look at the Manchester United accounts for last year, and you've got the costs of Richard Arnold and Patrick Stewart's redundancy. Well, that was £5 million. You've got the costs of the advice given to the Glazers about selling a chunk of Manchester United. Well, that was borne by the football club. And that was I think it was in the region of 30 million. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. So you see all these costs. You've got the cost of recruiting Dan Ashworth and then sacking him 5 months later. So they had to pay compensation to Newcastle. They had to pay his salary for 5 months, and they've had to give him a payoff. Again, this all comes down, and I've always said, if you look at a football club as a business and its success or lack of success, opportunities, it's Manchester United, biggest club, one of the biggest clubs in the world. So the opportunities to be successful there. It's the resources. Biggest stadium in the country. It's owned by a billionaire. It's got playing resources. It's got geographical resources. It's got reputational resources, brand resources, and it's got fiscal resources, all of which are fantastic. So why is it lumping around in the bottom half of the table? It purely comes down, in my opinion, to poor decisions, and those decisions have not got any better as a result of the change of ownership. And I know I've upset some Manchester United fans by saying, look at the new boss, same as the old boss. But there's an argument for saying that Ratcliffe has become a Glazer enabler because he's now the decision maker. The Glazers are still there. The Glazers have been bad news.
Yeah. First of all, Kieran, I'm furious at the idea of Man United oscillating between 12th and 13th because, as far as I'm concerned, that's Palace's job. Really, taking the bread and butter out of our mouth. I went to see, I told you, I went to see Bobby Numbers yesterday, my accountant, to sort out this year's tax. And as I left, there was a young actor from Salford who was about to go in, who was in the state I was in an hour beforehand, slightly nervy and pale. And we got chatting, and he's a Man United fan. He's third generation Man United fan. He said, the Ratcliffe honeymoon is well and truly over. But he said it's not just about the money. He said the money. He said it's really baffling to Man United fans that apparently we have to provide the money to make the savings, basically. So we have to pay more money for tickets, which most of the people in our area haven't got. But it's also simple things like they don't seem to realise the manager reporting that he's not talking to Marcus Rashford adds to because he said we love Marcus Rashford. He's one of our own.
Yeah.
Right. However he's playing on the pitch or not, you don't treat him like that. And what I thought was interesting because they specified the figure. They said in the matchday programme that they were £300 million in debt, which seemed an odd thing for a business to reveal to other people, Kieran. And like you say, it seems that they're trying to prepare the fans for the fact that they have to make those savings. But it does seem rather strange and disingenuous from a business point of view just to say, oh, by the way, we're in big trouble here. We could be breaching PSR rules, which could mean points deductions. Why would they say that out loud?
Again, they're trying to create expectations. I still expect Manchester United, they've got at least a 50-50 chance of recruiting somebody. Okay, that was the what, the 300 million. Let's take a look at the why. This is what I always tell to students. Somebody will give you a what. Right, I'm going to give you now the why. Why did they lose £300 million over the last 3 years? 200 million of that was interest. Where does that interest come from? Oh, the Glazers took out loans. Another 30-odd million pounds of that was what I've just been talking about. That was management consultancy advice to allow the Glazers to pocket an absolute fortune from the sale of shares. Then you've got the redundancies. You look at that £300 million, £250 million of that, you can point the finger at the Glazers for that.
Wow. £200 million in interest. Crikey. What? Just a matter of interest. Sorry, no pun intended. What would Tottenham be paying in interest on their stadium?
Oh, Tottenham are coming for a lot of observation recently. Yeah. Tottenham are paying about 25 to 30 mil a year, and they're getting. But as a result of those loans, they're getting an extra 60 to 70 million pounds of ticket receipts, and they're probably getting an extra 100 million pounds worth of commercial income.
So there is such a thing as good interest in a way, isn't there? But Man United's interest clearly isn't.
Manchester United's interest was because the Glazers, when they acquired the club, decided to saddle Manchester United Football Club with the borrowings and the interest that goes on it. They've spent close of £900 million since 2005 in interest charges, and that could have built half a stadium.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hey, Atlanta, Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Well, speaking of half a stadium, Kieran, when it comes to that, they do have, it seems, an ally right at the very top of government.
Yes. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is championing the regeneration project, which Manchester United's new stadium is going to be sort of the jewel in the crown.
Yeah.
Now, it has to be stated, there will be no public money going to the football club to build a new stadium. It's a private company. But could government resources be used to... and I used to live in Wally Range. I was in walking distance. Old Trafford, that area of Stretford is one of a bit of social deprivation. It's not like the Salford Quays area. It's not like the sort of the new areas around Deansgate and so on. So it is an area which would benefit from investment. We've also seen investment on the east side of Manchester.
Yeah.
Where Manchester City are based. And I think people have got to remember that as well. But there is now a report that it looks as if the club is going to favour a complete new stadium, which I think is the right decision. It's the more expensive decision, rather than effectively using Old Trafford as a glorified Jenga and building more bits on top to extend the capacity, which I don't think would have been great. The Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, he's in favour. He's been on the show before, so I'll reach out and see if we can get him to come and talk about it in more detail. Where I'm slightly concerned is that there are a lot of big numbers being thrown about in terms of it's going to contribute £9 billion to the economy, it's going to create 90,000 jobs, there's going to be 15,000 new houses and so on. Because we have seen this, we saw this, just going back to West Ham with the London Stadium, which has not generated as much money as was initially claimed. So I'd be a little bit cautious about how quickly, and B, how much or how realistic the numbers are. But I think it's certainly a positive from Manchester United, because they've got their peer group is Real Madrid and Barcelona and Bayern Munich. And we've seen the expansion of Real Madrid and the amazing stadium that they've had. And I think they've also looked at the SoFi Stadium in the US, which I think one of the American owners has been connected with, and so on. So it does look spectacular. It will probably won't come on stream before the end of this decade. So it's a big project. It's an ambitious project, but it's future-proofing Manchester United for the rest of this century. Those Manchester United fans who are on a waiting list for season tickets, thinking, "Great, capacity is going up from 75,000 to 100,000. That means good news for me." I'd not get overexcited about those tickets. Ain't going to season ticket holders.
Yeah.
As we've established on many an occasion, season ticket holders are bed blockers as far as the elite concerned. I think for clubs such as Brighton and Palace, who don't have a global fan base, season ticket holders play a different role, and they give that certainty. Manchester United could sell 100,000 day tickets for every match. So therefore, I do not anticipate an increase in the availability of season tickets, or if there is, it will be a nominal one. Also, if you think prices will go down because there's more seats available, think again. Certainly, again, we've got Spurs as an example of that. It's an expensive, and to be fair, the facilities at Spurs, as we've said on many occasions, are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I have a wry smile to myself sometimes, Kieran, when the West Ham owners will occasionally say, "Well, yeah, one thing about our new stadium is it does attract more people to the area to spend money in the shops." And you think, well, it could be you attracting more people to the area to spend more money in the shops, or it could be that huge shopping centre 300 yards down the road that's attracting people to the area to spend money in the shops. We've spoken a lot recently, Kieran, about football clubs doing a sort of, I was going to say Paul Daniels, but that'd be an old reference. I'm trying to think of a modern magician. Luckily, there aren't too many of them on TV, really, because they...
Darren Brown?
Darren Brown and maybe Penn and Teller, because basically...
Oh, yeah, they're doing a show, aren't they? Isn't it their 50th anniversary show in London?
Probably, yeah. It's really annoying that the one who doesn't speak carries on not speaking backstage as well. It makes it very difficult to...
I've listened to his podcast. He's a fascinating bloke.
They're very, very good at what they do, but my view is that magicians basically should be going around tables at wedding receptions, and apart from that, shouldn't really be seen in public, because if it was real magic, I'd be queuing up with the rest of them, but it's mirrors, innit?
Bobby Numbers might do you some magic, you never know.
It takes more than Bobby Numbers magic. Bobby Numbers, all accountants and magicians in their own way, Kieran, aren't they? But we've talked about football clubs waving a magic wand and making loans disappear, and Leicester City are the most recent club to do that.
Yes. As a result of the changes in PSR and the associated party transactions, if you have owners who lend money to football clubs and are charging no interest, under the revised rules, even though the owners are physically not getting an interest income, there is a nominal interest charge. And what the Premier League are going to say is that if you borrowed £120 million from the owners, we're going to charge 5% interest on that, or 8% interest, or whatever the interest rate is going to be. And that's going to go into your PSR calculations, which to me is absolutely crazy. We hope to have a chat with some people about from the Premier League about PSR and regulator and so on. And to me, surely that discourages investment. You've got owners willing to lend money, but they're not going to physically receive interest, but the club's going to be penalised. But to be fair to the owners of Leicester City, they've said, as a result of these changes in rules, and we have seen it elsewhere, we've seen it at Nottingham Forest, we're going to convert the loans into shares. And once you do that, there is no interest to be charged. So this is a case of unintended consequences, perhaps. The owners have lent the money in good faith, and now, as a result of the change in rules, they're effectively having to convert them into another form of capital. Doesn't make a huge difference overall, but I think it's a sign. I think some Leicester fans have been a bit twitchy about the owners' long-term intentions. To me, this is effectively writing off the loans, because they previously owned 100%. They still own 100%, but don't have the loans coming into them. That the owners are in Leicester City for the long haul.
Now, we know, Kieran, that Chelsea are in negotiations with the Premier League, and they were with UEFA, to try and avoid points deductions for various unorthodox payments made by previous regimes, on the basis that it was Chelsea themselves that grassed up the previous regime for the unorthodox payments. So I'm wondering whether it was the current Chelsea ownership who have grassed up Roman Abramovich for what seems... again, this should be getting far more headlines than it is, Kieran, to be honest.
Yes. Roman Abramovich is sanctioned by the UK government. He fell out with, I think he fell out with Boris Johnson when Boris Johnson was mayor of London, relating to his visa, and therefore he stopped living in London. But I mentioned, I think in the most recent show, we were talking about money laundering and issues relating to that. I'm not saying there's any money laundering relating to Roman Abramovich if he or his lawyers are listening. But what often you see is the use of offshore accounts. And it looks as if Roman Abramovich has routed around about £4.5 to £5 billion through companies in the British Virgin Islands. And certainly if you take a look at Chelsea's ownership, there were companies such as Fordstam and others who I sort of, and other people do this the same. You go through sort of company's house and then you reach a brick wall, and that brick wall is always where you've got an offshore company, and it doesn't show the information in any more detail. So, Roman Abramovich, who apparently these days spends his time between Istanbul, Tel Aviv, and part of Russia, says, nothing to do with me, Gov. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, it is good to get good legal advice. And it's also good to get good accounting advice because it looks as if it might be a bit of a botched tax avoidance scheme. And now HMRC are coming after Roman Abramovich's wealth, and there's a big smoking gun pointing in an RA type direction. So it's not personal. The tax should never be personal. And Roman Abramovich did many good things as owner of Chelsea, especially in terms of the community works as well. But there's been a leak to the BBC and the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, and they've been going through the emails, and I think there's been some correspondence with the tax authorities, and it looks as if Roman might have to go and get his checkbook out.
I like the idea that Roman Abramovich might listen to this pod, Kieran. I just have this very pleasing image of the plane taking off from Istanbul on the way to Tel Aviv, and Roman leaning back in his first class seat thinking, I'll just listen to this week's Price of Football, just relax me a little bit, things aren't going particularly well, and then spitting his tea out. He's going, that's a perfectly valid super yacht for hire scheme. What are these people talking about? Where's my lawyer? Almost out of nowhere, Kieran, in the past few weeks, we've had an awful lot of interest, both just people coming up to me in the portals and questions from listeners about the relationship of the 4 Welsh clubs in the EFL to Welsh football. And there's been another development this week. Yes. So we're talking Cardiff, Wrexham, Swansea and Newport. They thought, if we apply to play in the Welsh Cup, and that now is a route into the UEFA conference competition, they've seen TNS do okay from that. Yeah. So they say, okay, we might want to do that ourselves. And acting purely in self-interest, and that's what football clubs do. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. We all of our clubs act in self-interest, and I absolutely get that. You can see where the clubs have come from, but the Football Association, which normally is about as active as the Dormouse from Alice in Wonderland, in terms of getting involved, has said no, you can't. You've got to play in because you're in the EFL, you've got to play in the FA Cup, and you can't put a team in the Welsh League Cup, and therefore you can't use this as an opportunity to play in Europe. Because although we say that from a Premier League perspective, if you get into the Europa Conference, you're doing it for the fun, you're doing it for the glory, you're doing it for the fans' memories, and those are absolutely great things, by the way. From a fan's perspective, it doesn't tend to move the dial, especially the Europa Conference. You're not going to make money unless you probably get to the semi-final or the final and win it, as we've seen West Ham, because that automatically gives you an upgrade into next year's competition. But if you're a smaller club, the numbers involved, you're getting, I think, something like €250,000 for a win.
Well, that's a lot of money for clubs who are in the EFL, and I think that the Welsh clubs in the EFL saw this as an opportunity, but that door has been well and truly slammed shut by the Football Association itself.
Morecambe, Kieran, are a team that's been on our watch list for a couple of years now. And I was listening to 5 Live just a day or so ago, and I can't remember his name. I apologise profusely for this, but it was a chap from the Not the 20 podcast. It's a fantastic podcast dealing with life outside the Premier League, who is reporting that the board of directors have issued another letter saying they have no confidence in the owners of the club, which is in itself a remarkable thing to do once, let alone 2 or 3 times. So what's going on this week, Kieran?
Well, the Morecambe owners have been unable to prove that they've got enough money to run the club, and their proof of funds has failed in effect. Normally, it is an owner of a business who appoints the board of directors.
Yeah.
So and you've got to give a huge doff of the cap to the directors who are effectively doing it as volunteers.
Yeah.
Who have said, we're going to do the opposite. We know we can be sacked as a result of this, but then if they are sacked, you've got to go and replace them with somebody. So that's why that probably not being the case, and they'll be playing. Yeah, if the owner wants to bring in stooges, the stooges presumably would have to be paid. So that's why we're in this situation. We've seen what's happened at Morecambe. It's been subject to a number of sanctions by the EFL, and it knew the position that if the owner didn't sell the club, and the attempts to sell it have failed, and as always, it comes down to a pricing issue. Then we have this situation where the EFL said we're not going to allow you to sign players, to try to put the pressure on the owner. The trouble is, doesn't care. So, but they've set a precedent to other clubs, so they have to apply this rule consistently.
The trouble is as well for Morecambe fans, if they can't sign any players, they're less likely to prevent the relegation, which is going to affect the value of the club in future. This having to provide proof of funds, Kieran. Is this something that the EFL have asked them to do as a matter of urgency, or is this just a kind of annual thing that club owners have to do anyway?
I think it's an ongoing issue. The governance structure at the EFL since the arrival of Trevor Birch, and I'm not saying that because we've had Trevor on the show a couple of occasions, has been substantially increased. It was very lackadaisical historically. And it's effectively just saying to owners, you show us the money. And if you're not prepared to show us the money, then we're going to act against you. And that's what we've seen here.
I love my wife, but like most couples, we had different sleeping needs. One of us likes it warm, and the other prefers to stay cool. I found a perfect fabric to keep us both comfortable. Viscose from Bamboo. I'm Tyler, founder of Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth offers the softest, most comfortable sheets, towels, PJs, joggers, and more. If you sleep in our sheets for 100 nights and don't absolutely love your experience, we will refund your money, no questions asked.
Go to CozyEarth.com/Spotify and use code Spotify to save up to 40%. That's CozyEarth.com/Spotify.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
We saw some very unsavoury scenes, Kieran, after the Fulham Man United game, of Man United fans surrounding the car of Jim Ratcliffe and other Man United executives, which are not nice to watch. The chairman of Farsley Celtic, Paul Barthorpe, Kieran, has said that he's been having death threats from Farsley fans, hand-delivered death threats, which again is reprehensible. But Farsley Celtic is a story that we feel obliged to cover because in the last couple of weeks we've had an awful lot of requests from Farsley fans, and it seems from the requests we're getting from the fans that any problems at the club, and they seem to be substantial, are down to the chairman. So I would appreciate a bit of insight from you, Kieran, on what's happening here.
Yeah, Farsley Celtic are not doing particularly well in terms of attracting crowds, but that's a function of finances for individuals and where the club is. It has been making losses. I'm not denying that. There appears to be a complete breakdown of trust between the owner, Paul Barthorpe, and a significant proportion of the fan base. Now, we're seeing that Jim Ratcliffe's been getting it, Daniel Levy's been getting a load of stick, and that tends to be associated, if things aren't working on the pitch, you are looking for a focus point. And sometimes it's been players, sometimes it's been referees, sometimes it's managers, but I think increasingly fans are saying, well, the ultimate person responsible for the position of the club is the owner, because as I was talking about Manchester United, it's the quality of the decisions being made. I think there are concerns from Farsley Celtic fans, and I am actually currently trying to go into this in more detail. So we'll probably cover this in more depth in a week or two. That his ambitions for the club aren't necessarily honourable, and they fear for the future of the club in terms of its existence. If the club is losing money and is reliant upon owner funding, the owners sometimes leverage on the back of that to try to make things awkward. So it is messy. At the same time, if you're angry, non-violent direct action. That's the way to do it, and that does not involve death threats. That's as somebody that's received death threats myself from fans of one club. It was something which does spook you. I'll be honest, and you laugh it off as keyboard warriors, idiots, but you do actually look over your shoulder on a couple of occasions when you wouldn't do historically, and that died down. That was not pleasant, and it was only coming from one or two people who were not representative of, in my view, of the fans of that club. But it's still unpleasant, and it's not acceptable, and it's equally not acceptable in respect of Michael Oliver. Michael Oliver made a decision which was not a great decision, but he made fewer mistakes at the weekend than Havertz did.
I don't really want to get into this discussion, Kieran, but it's so disingenuous of Mikel Arteta, and I have to say of Sky and TalkSport to condemn, rightly so. I mean, anyone, I don't care if they're a teenager or whatever, but anyone who threatens violence to a referee and his family for doing that deserves everything that's coming their way. But on the other hand, these are fires that are fully stoked by Mikel Arteta's reaction afterwards, and by TalkSport and Sky, who, every second story was, this is the worst decision ever been made. There's a conspiracy against Arsenal Football Club, and then they wonder why people are getting really upset because they're having their confirmations, their biases confirmed. We will look, Farsley fans, as Kieran says, we will look into the story in more detail and present a fuller picture next week, hopefully. But in the meantime, if Mr. Barthorpe or Farsley Celtic fans want to talk to us, we'd only be too happy to. We have Swindon fans talking to us next week. Here we've got an interview with Spirit of 69. And we're always very open, and I like to think of us as a kind of arbitration service, Kieran. We just want to hear what's going on, basically.
Yeah.
DAZN has been in the news recently, Kieran. This is our final story. Good old DAZN, who by sheer coincidence managed to get that job broadcasting the FIFA Club World Cup. I'm sure the other companies that applied for the job are disappointed that they didn't get it after a long and transparent.
I'm not applying for it, yes.
After a long and transparent process of selecting the correct candidate, it doesn't seem to have helped them with their money situation, though, Kieran.
No, and this is a story which we have covered, I think, in depth before, looking at it from a different angle. We're not saying we told you so, but we always did say there will be a deal announced between FIFA and a broadcaster.
Yeah.
And then we will expect to see that broadcaster all of a sudden getting a financial injection from a source which is friendly to FIFA. And those two issues came to light. And the third issue is the DAZN itself is losing an absolute fortune. So its results came out. I think it was somewhere in hundreds of millions, if perhaps $1 billion loss, because it's not generating the level of subscriber numbers that it anticipated. It has paid lots of money for certain broadcasting rights. It's not big in football, but football is part of the portfolio. It will be interesting to see whether the Club World Cup makes a positive difference to the numbers of subscribers, but I'm not convinced that will be the case. I can only make that comment on the basis of anecdotal evidence. And when I talk to my friends, he say, "You're going to watch it?" I'll watch it, but I'm not prepared to pay for it. So that means either one of two things: they don't watch it, or and we're not condoning this. There are people that will offer you a suite of packages from illicit ways, and I think the problem that's existing these days is that by the time you add together all of your subscriptions, and let's be honest, we've got a subscription model ourselves, so we're not completely innocent in all of this, and we always say that that there is a free version of Price of Football, which we're delighted that people engage with that. That you add together all the costs of the subscriptions, and people are saying that's too much. And I think there is a broader pricing issue in terms of subscription TV, which is manna from heaven as far as the pirates and the criminal elements who exploit that from offering an alternative at a much lower price.
I may be going out on a limb here, Kieran, and when you say we're not entirely innocent, I'm going to say we're more innocent than FIFA.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think we'll put that on the posters for our next live gig. More innocent than FIFA. It was nice to see Mr. Infantino was in the country at the weekend, Kieran. I believe he was at the Man City Chelsea game. Did you get a text with little WhatsApp message saying fancy a drink down the Frog and Firkin?
I was slightly disappointed. But I could have knocked him up something with my air fryer.
See, I've turned you into a professional, Kieran. You're topping and tailing the show with the same references. I'm welling up. Oh, my Lord. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, which is what we call our subscription service. Maybe that's what DAZN should do, call it the Price of DAZN Club. Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and much more, including a monthly look into our front rooms and a chat with lots of other people. And you can just do that by going to priceoffootball.com and clicking on the Join the Club to sign up today. One important thing to be aware of is if you are one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers, your membership will not transfer over automatically. If you sign up to the new club, you'll need to cancel your subscription and set up a new one using the link on the website. And we'll be turning off that Patreon offering at the end of February. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on X and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, in fact, with that brilliant interview with Rafael Science of Osasuna, which, if you're a member of the Price of Football Club, you'll have already had access to. So there you go. And we'll be back on Tuesday with our next Questions Pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
This will be a very quick customary farewell.
You've got to go. Well, just say goodbye then.
I'm teaching in 4 minutes.
Well, just say goodbye. Go on.
Goodbye.
Just for once. Goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.